So, as we discussed earlier in the week, Boris Johnson has advised the Queen to prorogue Parliament. If anyone was in any doubt, this government is a very different beast to the last one. Unlike Theresa May, who responded to parliamentary antics by acquiescing to their demands, Boris Johnson looks like he's planning to do no such thing. This is an incredibly potent signal of his overall Brexit strategy. So in this video, we're going to discuss Johnson's Brexit strategy and explain why he's decided to prorogue Parliament. Before we jump into that though, let me quickly shout out our Instagram account. We update that account with the latest news and exclusive content, so if you want to be kept up to date with all of our videos and bonus content, give us a follow. We're at TLDR News UK. So let's answer a critical question. What is prorogation? Simply put, prorogation is how parliamentary sessions end. Between every election, Parliament is divided into sessions, which are normally about a year long. Each parliamentary session ends with prorogation and begins with the Queen's speech, setting out the government's legislative agenda. The contents of the speech are debated and voted on, and if a government cannot pass a Queen's speech, it's customary for the Prime Minister to resign and call a general election. Because of this, the UK Parliament is always prorogued in order to begin a new session. It's like you're tapping in and out of the tube. You can't tap in without tapping back out again. That makes prorogation a normal constitutional device that's used by every Prime Minister. So, if prorogation is a standard practice, why isn't this a topic we've discussed more? And why is it so controversial this time round? Well, put simply, it's because this time round, it looks like the decision was clearly politically motivated. That's because some fear that Johnson is proroguing Parliament to force a no-deal exit through an unwilling Parliament. The government's number one legislative priority is to achieve a new withdrawal agreement with the EU, one with a different backstop. When they say new, they likely just mean the existing withdrawal agreement with a different backstop. So if the government's plan is to negotiate a new-ish deal and get it through Parliament, why are they spending time making controversial moves like prorogation and provoking Parliament? Well, the opposition parties aren't a huge fan of this policy, and the government has every incentive to make it harder for the opposition's attempts to prevent them from implementing their policies. And prorogation does exactly that. Proroguing Parliament preempts opposition MPs' efforts to find a legislative means to prevent a no deal. It also prevents them from voting to cancel the conference recess. That's because during the time of prorogation, there was ordinarily going to be a recess for the party conference season. During this recess, Parliament would have been suspended, so some argue that prorogation is only adding a few days to the existing recess. However, MPs can vote to cancel a recess, and many think they are about to do this. This would have given anti-no deal MPs more time to find and enact a legislative path to extending Article 50. That's no longer possible though, as MPs cannot vote to cancel prorogation. So back to the important part. How does all of this affect Brexit? Well, it significantly reduces anti-no deal MPs' room for manoeuvre in order to prevent a no deal, and, well, it forces their hands. Early this week, opposition MPs announced they were planning to use legislative measures to try and stop a no deal, rather than calling for a vote of no confidence to replace the government. By them focusing on a legislative route, the Church House declaration suggested that they don't have the numbers to replace Johnson with an interim Prime Minister. By proroguing Parliament, Johnson is ramping up the pressure on opposition MPs. MPs now have a narrower window to compel Johnson to seek an extension. This puts added pressure onto anti-no deal MPs to quickly produce a bill. And this is not as easy as it sounds, because the MPs who oppose no deal are actually divided about what they do want. Some want to block no deal because they want to seek a new deal, while others want a second referendum in order to remain. Johnson is exploiting this by forcing them to choose, and the very fact they were thinking about cancelling the conference season could suggest that they need more time, likely because they don't have a watertight bill ready in order to extend Article 50, or they haven't decided what they want to do yet. Even if they did agree to a bill to stop no deal, Johnson and Number 10 are preparing for a legislative showdown. Number 10 are examining all and any options which could prevent the opposition bill from passing. This includes pro-Brexit peers such as Lord Forsyth and Howard filibustering any bill in the House of Lords which seeks to compel Johnson into an extension. And there are no guillotine motions in the Lords, unlike the Commons, which means there's no time limit on how long they can debate a bill. Other options under consideration range from the relatively benign, such as disrupting the Commons debate on the Northern Irish Assembly, to prevent MPs from using it as a vehicle for hostile amendments, to the nuclear option of ennobling pro-leave Lords to kill any bill in the House of Lords, to the thermonuclear of Number 10 advising the Queen not to give royal assent to any bill compelling an extension and the consequences of it. The government are prepared to do whatever it takes to make sure that MPs' attempts to compel the government to extend Article 50 are as difficult as possible. So what would happen if anti-No Deal MPs scrapped their plan of passing legislation and tried to replace Johnson with someone else? Attempting to bring down the government would be risky. MPs would need to overcome the most important barrier. Who could replace Johnson? Currently there's no clear alternative that can command the confidence of the House. The most obvious alternative would be Jeremy Corbyn. However, he would alienate crossbench MPs, such as Luciana Berger, as well as more moderate MPs, and the Tory MPs that will be needed to get him across the line. If they would support Corbyn temporarily, their electoral message in the subsequent general election would be very difficult. How would they campaign against Corbyn when they voted for him to replace Johnson? Similarly, a moderate Tory or Labour MP such as Ken Clarke or Harriet Harman would not be supported by the Labour leadership and MPs on Labour's payroll. It's simply not in their interest to support them. Timing also makes collapsing a government more difficult. Tory MPs will be hesitant to vote against their government when the prospect of a deal is still there. To them, the time to move would be when it's clear that there won't be a new agreement. Even if they did manage to pass a motion of no confidence, the subsequent election wouldn't be easy. Regardless of when an election is called, it wouldn't be guaranteed that Johnson loses. If current polling continues and the Conservatives maintain their lead and the Brexit Party lose support, Johnson could actually end up winning an outright majority, in which case he'd be able to pursue his Brexit policy without the constraints he currently faces with a hung parliament. The nature of any election would be brutal. Dominic Cummings is said to be preparing for a People versus Parliament campaign that portrays the Commons as obstructing Johnson from implementing the referendum result. Forcing a general election vote through a vote of no confidence would play directly into Cummings' electoral strategy. Pro-Remain MPs appearing on TV could actually backfire and strengthen support for Johnson, as one official is quoted saying anonymously. Some on the Prime Minister's team see the uproar and protests caused as being helpful. They believe that outside London, the protests and petitions against prorogation will be seen as the London elite once again ignoring the vote to leave the EU. So what does Johnson actually want out of this? Why is he creating the controversy? The answer is simple: pressure. Johnson is increasing the pressure on both the EU and MPs in order to blast through the impasse. He's demonstrating to both that he and his government are serious about taking the UK out of the EU on the 31st of October. Do or die. He's making it abundantly clear that he will oppose any attempt by MPs to compel him to extend Article 50. By proroguing Parliament, Johnson has demonstrated that he's not afraid to confront MPs who oppose no deal, either by exploiting their internal divisions or by extreme measures to prevent a bill from compelling him to seek an extension. From this pressure, Johnson is hoping to craft the most important thing needed to unlock the impasse: a majority. By demonstrating to MPs that an extension is not going to happen, he creates a minute-to-midnight environment. Unlike the 3 meaningful votes earlier in the year, rejecting the deal wouldn't lead to a better deal or to no Brexit. Voting against the deal would lead to a no deal. This would also lead to a general election, which would likely either produce a Tory or Labour government. This emphasises another simple choice facing MPs: Johnson or Corbyn. If and when Johnson presents an agreement to Parliament, he's also presenting a binary choice: this deal or Corbyn. It's in this situation that Johnson hopes MPs will ratify the agreement. He's hoping that a group of MPs, comprised of many of those who oppose a Corbyn government, resign from the Labour Party over anti-Semitism, and those who have opposed no deal, a second referendum and May's deal, will coalesce around his deal as the lesser of all evils. Johnson's strategy is certainly high risk, with some profound consequences. His honeymoon period is over, and he now faces a battle for his political life. If he's successful, he'll be the Prime Minister that delivered Brexit against the odds. He will be rewarded electorally with a majority to implement his vision for Brexit Britain. If he fails, then he'll be the MP that crashed the UK out of the EU, with profound consequences for the Union. His political career will be finished, but we won't know the outcome until Halloween. Until then, we can only guess. We will of course keep you updated as the news emerges, so be sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to be kept up to date. And if you want to be notified every time we release a video, then also hit the bell icon. If you want more content from us, you can find us across all the social networks simply by searching for TLDR News. And if you want a name to be featured at the end of videos just like these people, then be sure to back us on Patreon. There's a link to that in the description.